So I was born in northern Wisconsin, and I grew up in the country. I was all the way up in the tippy top on Lake Superior, the Chequamegon Bay, though it's spelled pretty weird. It's like Chequamegon. I don't know. It's got a weird spelling, but it's pronounced Chequamegon. Anyway, that was a very interesting experience, but I figured I'd talk a little bit more about growing up in the country in this video. This is another one of those like story time videos where I'm just, letting you guys in a little bit, opening up the doors, if you will, letting you guys know a little bit about myself. Hopefully that helps build like some character for me, because I like you guys to view me as like more of a person instead of just like some robot sitting there doing drop list videos. So I'd like to, build a personality of myself around the channel as well, though you obviously can't see the full me on the channel. This is like shining a little bit of a light on myself. But with that being said, I'll just quit talking about that and talk a little bit more about growing up in the country. So I'm from like this small town, like I said, on Lake Superior in the Chequamegon Bay. I believe the population, well, I know the population. Every time I drove into town, you'd pass the population sign, and it was at 8,216 when I left. I was born there, and we lived in that town for first like 2 years of my life, I believe, and then we moved out to the country, which was like 15 miles south of there. And then my parents built a house there, and we lived in the country. So how was that? Growing up, it was really cool. Like as a kid, it was amazing. Like we had a ton of land, just because you're in the middle of nowhere. Land is pretty cheap. It's not like my parents were rich by any means at all. But we had a decent amount of land, and my brother and I, we'd always like run around in the woods picking up sticks, like pretend we were in Lord of the Rings and like Star Wars and stuff like that. It was really cool. But yeah, we do a lot of that, and then there's also like this ravine where we'd build like some forts and just kind of chill in those. But yeah, there's a lot of outdoor activities. We do like paintball and stuff. Obviously not when we were really little, but I suppose try to keep it a little bit more chronological. When we were younger, yeah, we just play around a lot. There's a lot of obviously a lot of space for activities, things like snowmobiling. When we were small, we had like little Kit Kats, and we just rip around like the backyard and stuff like that. We also had some dirt bikes, like some little tiny ones like this. And then growing up, like my brother, he like was more into dirt bikes. I was like a little bit more into four wheels. I like the stability a little bit more. So growing up, I kind of went down that branch. Got like a four-wheeler, a little bit bigger four-wheeler, things like that. But country had a lot of cool aspects like that. But also getting older, you'd meet some of your neighbors, and I think like my closest neighbor was probably, I don't know, I'd say like quarter mile to like half mile. But that's kind of different because they're older people, and then they also weren't part of this like really religious like mega community that kind of consumed the vast majority of the country, or the people in the country from where I was from. The closest one of them was probably like a mile away. But yeah, I had some neighbors. It was like quarter mile to half mile, and then like the other direction would be like half mile. Other direction, it was like a mile maybe, and then the other cardinal direction would be, I don't know, no neighbors for like, I don't even know if there were neighbors like anywhere that way. Probably like 3 miles maybe. It was a long distance. Like I said, we had a lot of property because it's just the middle of nowhere. So we had like a bunch of trails in the woods. We just roam around, catch gardener snakes and things like that. But yeah, that was cool, and it's definitely a good opportunity for like a kid. Like kids have all this energy, so it's definitely nice to have the space to kind of just play around, like in this giant sandbox to just mess around. And there's a river that we lived by. You could go down to that and fish, catch they're called chubs. It was like basically the only thing you would catch in that river. Kind of these weird like mutt fish, just like a mix of just weird shit. And it was like, I don't know, usually like that long they put up like no fight, but we're here with these fishing rods like this big, like whoa, being like 4 years old and stuff. So but that was cool. But then came elementary school, which actually the country they had, so like despite there being the city like 15 miles away, the country actually had their own. It used to be K through 12, but since there weren't enough kids to fill the K through 12, I think is the reason, they cut it down to K through 5. And then once you hit that like middle school, or a lot of people call it junior high, I always grew up calling it middle school, but once you hit that age, the 6th grade, you would end up moving to the, it was still part of the same school district, but you'd move to the like middle school in town, and then go to middle school, go through high school in town, things like that. But when we got subjected to the elementary school lifestyle, you met all of the, like you got thrown in with all these like country kids, and like I said, there was like this huge group of like really religious people, and they're raised very interestingly. I forget exactly what religion it was, but they're very strict. It was like no TV, no like computer, or maybe they could have computers, I don't know, I forget, like no music, stuff like that. And it's kind of strange, they had like a lot of kids, like every family would have like an average of maybe like 10 kids, so it was just crazy. And I feel like that bred for environments where a lot of the kids were probably neglected, so they weren't probably raised as well as a lot of other people, and it definitely showed in their behavior at school. They're very mean, so it was like these massive groups of well, I think my grade size was probably like, out there I think the grade size was probably like 30 kids. Like I said, there was like, they ended up having to close down because it was so small, but I think the grade size out there was like 30 kids. And yeah, they were rough. They were like really mean, but I definitely found, you know, friends in the like small handful of people that weren't a part of that community. And yeah, that's like an example is, I think in like 2nd grade we were playing like kickball or something. One of them called me the N-word, and it was like, I was like, what is that, like 7 or whatever. I was like, yo mom, what's this mean? And they're like, well, where'd you hear that? And it's like another little 7-year-old calling me that because like the ball went my way instead of his or something, just stupid. So it's like, that's kind of an environment that the country was in. And I'm not just saying that these people were like, obviously a lot of those people were racist. I'm gonna sugarcoat that, but I'm not saying it was just those like religious kids. The majority of people in the country were kind of racist. Like it's just how it is up there. There's not a whole lot of diversity at all. There's like one black kid in that elementary school, and I felt really bad for them. That's those like religious kids were really hard on like anybody with a different skin color. And then also lost my train of thought. Anybody with a different skin color. And then also as far as diversity goes, you know, there's like that one black kid. And then we also lived very close to a Native American reservation, so there were a lot of Native Americans there. Not in that school district, but moving, like getting older, there would be more. Like once we went to middle school and high school, there were a lot more just because that reservation was right by, so like all the kids would get sent to there. Another thing with the elementary country school being so small, they didn't have any sports teams. And then actually those religious families, like they weren't allowed to join sport teams, so even if they did have sports teams, like I don't think any sport would have enough kids out of the age groups to, you know, have a functioning team. But that being said, the nearby town, the one that I would go to in the future for middle school and high school, had sports teams, and I joined up in like 4th or 5th grade. I started playing football, got to meet a couple of the kids that would be my friends a little bit further down the road, so that was nice. Getting older, like living in the country, definitely lost a lot of its perks. Like you had all that room to play and like go fishing, do all this stuff. I never really got into hunting, so I never like hunted there, but my brother hunted a little bit and did that on like some of our property, but he never really got into that as well. But that was also an option. There were just like a lot of outdoor activities, especially being like so much land, so much room for activities. But getting older, it kind of lost a lot of its appeal. I guess probably the best thing then would probably be just the privacy that comes from living in such a secluded area. It was just kind of nice to, you know, have all this room and not like a bunch of people bugging you. But yeah, moving on to middle school and high school, when I transitioned from going to school in the country to going to school in the town, I met all these new friends, and the thing that sucked was none of them lived out in the country. So if I wanted to go, like obviously like all the kids who lived in the country went to elementary school, so I had already known them, but I made all these new friends that lived, in town. So if I wanted to hang out with them or go do anything, it was usually like, oh, I'd have to do this like 15-minute drive and then 15-minute drive back. And obviously I was the only one who lived out in the country, so like they would come visit every now and then, but for the most part, it would be me heading in, which was more so of a pain in high school, because like when I actually got my license, it'd be like, oh, I'd be heading in every weekend to hang out, like probably a couple times every weekend to hang out with everybody. But moving on, I don't think a whole lot of the things I would talk about, which would mostly be like things that happened in middle school, things that happened in high school, really relate to this topic as much as a lot of the other content in this video. So I guess we'll probably just kind of like wrap it up now instead of just rambling on, and maybe we'll include that in a future video if you guys are interested in that, or if I feel like making that. But looking back on living in the country, it's definitely a good thing when you're a kid, because like I said, you have all this energy, you want to go out and play and do all this stuff. Instead of like running around inside bouncing off the walls, we'd go out and run around in the woods chasing each other around. We even made like a lot of like bows. You'd find like a stick or a branch that had a little curve on it, tie some twine and like make your own arrows and shoot them. Like it obviously didn't have a whole lot of like elasticity or like bounce back, being just like twine, so like it's not like it went very far. But we'd always mess around in the woods, go do that stuff, build our own, not necessarily forts, but kind of like man versus wild shelter type stuff. Like cut down a bunch of evergreen branches and like lean them up against something and make like a little like lean-to that you could go in, and yeah, just do a lot of that stuff. A lot of like fishing. We weren't really like canoe or anything because the river was so shallow, but we would catch a lot of fish, like I said, and then also crayfish. We make a lot of like sand castles, or else our neighbor, which we were really good friends with growing up, would he lived on like a separate river from us, and the one that we lived on was really sandy, and the one over by his house, or the area by his house, was like full of clay. So a lot of the time we'd make like these clay castles or these like coliseums, and we don't tell PETA, we'd put like crayfish that we caught in there, and we'd have them like battle each other. They wouldn't kill each other or anything, but they just like go in there and like pick each other up and stuff, and then we'd kind of like dig a little channel back into the river, and just like they'd wash out. But yeah, I think it was fun. But obviously growing up, getting a little bit older, when all your friends are somewhere else and those are the people you want to hang out with, it's not very convenient having all of this space once again and like nobody to share it with, I guess, which could be applied to a lot of situations. But that being said, this is the end of the video, I suppose. I hope you guys' quarantines are going all right. I hope you're doing all right, enjoying your weekend, your long weekend. I'm recording this Memorial Day weekend. I believe this is Memorial Day and Labor Day. I think this is Memorial Day, the one in May. But yeah, that's about it. I'm not exactly sure when this will go up. Maybe Memorial Day week, maybe the following week, maybe never. Maybe I won't save this video. But that being said, thank you guys. Drop a like if you like these storytime videos. Let me know, then I'll make more of them. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it.